Hello, this is another go to talky YouTube video. For doing this video I've got a mini cup of tea, just a mini cup of tea, just the minimum cup of tea you can get by with. But this one is a tag reply to an open tag by markvergeer, someone I know a little bit online. Well, he might not know me, but I've been in the same chat room as him once, and what he was asking about was racing games, and so basically I'm not really a racing game aficionado, and I think a lot of what influences you is the platform you start with. And I started with a BBC Micro, and it wasn't a great racing platform. It had a few good games in that genre, but well, as I say, it wasn't the best racing platform. Ironically, it was the home starting point for one of the most famous racing games, Revs by Jeff Crammons, but which, funnily enough, I've never played. It's one of the most famous BBC Micro games, and I never got hold of a copy, and I've never played it. And there was what I consider to be quite a good conversion of Pole Position, and you know, obviously Arcade Racer. And there's another one called Crazy Rider, which is another arcade one, a bit of a silly one really, but quite good fun. You know, just sort of a bit ridiculous. You know, a motorbike game by Superior Software, and I'm just trying to think. That's about it for racing games. There are a couple of overhead ones. There was actually quite a good BBC Micro one called Grand Prix Construction Kit, and as the name implies, it came with a track designer, which was quite good fun. Probably the only BBC Micro game to do that. But then, anyway, yeah, the next platform I got was Acorn Archimedes, and again, it wasn't a brilliant platform for racing games. There was quite an early one of the first games I got for it, called E-Type, which was a racing game with mouse control. And looking at it now, I don't think it's aged terribly well. It's an arcade racer. It uses the 256 colour mode on the Arc, so the graphics are quite good. And then we got a conversion of Lotus Esprit 2, which would just be identical to the Amiga version. And I bought it at one of the Acorn shows down in London, probably at the Wembley Conference Centre. And I played it a bit, and I seem to think it was quite good, but it wasn't, you know, one of my favourite games or anything. And there was another one that came out just as I was getting out of owning the Arc, and I actually had a couple of years away from computers in general. Other things took over a bit. So there was one called Stunt Racer 2000, which was a kind of a combination between Stunt Car Racer on the Amiga and other platforms, and kind of hard driving and Carmageddon, because it had quite a lot of freedom. Now, I had a few goes on it, but by then I don't think I had a working computer at all. I didn't have a monitor. My monitor broke. So then when I got into computers again, I got a PC. I didn't get into racers so much. Anyway, I can't remember quite when it was. It was maybe even 3 or 4 years ago. I got a PS1 as a retro machine, and I got quite into the races on that. I'll show you a couple of those. I'll show you the boxes, because there's one. Let's have a look. Here we go. Slightly divisive game, Revolt. I loved it when I was playing it. I don't know that the PS2, sorry, the PS1, I don't know that it was the best platform for it. But I think maybe the PC version, well, they're a bit stuck together. Don't know why that is. Don't know what someone's been doing with it. It's quite a... Anyway, I enjoyed it. I agree the handling is a bit unpredictable. So sometimes you can feel like you're winning the race, and then you just make the slightest mistake and you go into a spin, and it's a bit annoying. I agree with that. And then the PlayStation hardware, it was just at the edge of what it could do. So the frame rate wasn't brilliant, which sometimes made the handling a bit more difficult. But I consider it quite good fun, and I think I either finished it or I nearly finished it in a summer where we had like a 6-day period with no internet. Yeah, so it came in handy then, and I enjoyed it. And another one I liked, you probably think I'm going to say Colin McRae. Well, in my copy, these are some of the games I got with my PlayStation, my PS1, 3 or 4 years ago. And my version's got something called Porsche Challenge in the box rather than Colin McRae. But it's downhill, no fear, downhill mountain biking. And it's a mountain biking game, as you probably guess. And I really liked it. Really liked it. Very good fun. Good graphics for a PlayStation. And anyway, they're the two main ones. Now, when I got the PS1, the way that racing games came into their own for me was because sometimes for my work I have to listen to podcasts, to learn about industry news and that kind of thing. So racing games are really good, particularly console racing games, for something to do while you're listening to a podcast. Because I feel a bit weird just sitting there listening to a podcast. I don't really feel I can do any reading or any writing while podcasts on the go. And also, particularly with a game, if it's a bit mindless, I sometimes feel a bit guilty just playing a game, particularly if I've got work to do. However, with the racing game, I can sit there and play the racing game and listen to the podcast as well. So then a couple of years ago I got a PS2. I've got a PS2 Slimmy now. One of the ones I like is this one, Downhill Domination. It's, in many ways, I don't think it's an official follow-up. It is Codemasters, so it might be a connected game, but it's similar to the downhill mountain biking game I've got on the PS1. And the criticism I make of it is a bit too easy, but I really do enjoy it. The graphics are almost like pilot wings on the SNES, in that you go flying up into the air and the camera moves around, and it's almost a bit dizzying, the effect. And on the PS2, the graphics are very smooth. They're maybe not the most detailed, even by PS2 standards, but they've gone for smoothness and a camera that really does move around, and it's sort of, I suppose you'd say, visually exciting. And there's a good variety of settings. There's sort of quite a lot of outdoor, it's all outdoor really, but there's some urban settings and some sort of desert island style settings and all sorts. I really enjoy that, just to kind of relax, whack on a podcast in the background and just sit there and just kind of veg out a little bit and play that. So, let's have a look. This is another one I've got. Gran Turismo A spec. Obviously, I'm coming into these games years later. I mean, more than a decade later in some cases. So I didn't follow it. I'm not a fan of the series, but I have enjoyed it. It's obviously a bit more complicated than some of the other ones. It's obviously quite a hard game, and you start off with a car that is fairly difficult to control. So in a way, I find that a bit annoying. And it's more of a sim than just a plain game. That's the point I'd make about racing games. Sometimes when you upgrade the car, the handling changes, and it's a shame because that means the gameplay changes a bit. So in some of these games, what I'd do is I'd just give myself the basic car because the handling is a bit more fun. So it's maybe a bit weird. But, this is another one of the early games I got for the PS2. Outrun 2006 Coast to Coast. I say I'm not a huge fan of racing games. Many happy memories of summer holidays and playing Outrun in the arcades. That music, Magical Sound Shower, is just my sound of the summer. It really takes me back to those summers, as a child. But so that series I quite like. Now that is a consummate arcade racer. It is not a sim. One thing I found annoying about that is that it's one of those games where you can be doing really, really well, but the other cars are always like 2 seconds behind you. So if you make a mistake near the end, they were 2 seconds behind you at all times, no matter how fast you were going and how well you were doing. So I don't think it simulates the other cars. And that is a great looking game. Great looking, great music, just very flash. It's obviously just a pure arcade racer. It's not like a Gran Turismo game. But let's have a look. Need for Speed Underground 2. I had Need for Speed Underground, which I liked, but the disc was a bit scuffed. So sometimes some of the track wouldn't load in, and so I had to upgrade. I got this probably from Cash Converters or CEX or something like that. It's got a bit of the GTA vibe in terms of you do a bit of exploring, a bit of driving around, looking for races and things like that. However, because of the role that I've relegated racing games to on the PS2, I just want to sit back and play and just race. With this, it can be a bit frustrating as you're exploring the city looking for races and you just want to race. It is a good design, and probably if I'd got it back when this was a brand new game, I probably would have thought it was fantastic. But now, when I just want to race while I'm listening to a podcast. And also, this is another thing that annoys me. It annoyed me a bit with Outrun Coast to Coast. One of the problems with it is it makes you play every mode, and there's some modes that I'm not particularly into. So Drift, I didn't really like. Burnout series, very enjoyable arcade racer, very good fun, very ridiculous, and sort of maybe on balance, maybe the PS2 game, PS2 racer I've enjoyed the most, along with Gran Turismo 3, which is good even though it's a bit techy and a bit difficult. So there's probably loads that I missed out, but that's basically my history with racing games. I'm not an expert on them, really. I've not really followed them. I've only really got into racing games years, literally more than a decade in some cases after they were released, and they were retro games, but they're just so enjoyable to sit there and play. So okay, if that recorded. Obviously you won't see this if it hasn't been recording, but if that's recorded, then that's my second proper talky video.